The Last of Us Part 2 is on its way to being adapted for television in just over a month from now, and I could not be more excited to see it. Co-creator Neil Druckmann has already given us hints towards what we can expect, both in regards to changes they plan on making to the original story, and how far they're willing to go to adapt in just one season. I think the thing I'm looking forward to the most in regards to the narrative and creative changes they make is how they flesh out the world. My favorite aspect of the first season was the changes they made, and in today's video, I sort of want to touch on some of those decisions and maybe even do some speculating on what might come next. Up first, I want to talk about the cold openings. First and foremost, I sincerely hope that the trend of cold openings continues. The ones we saw in episodes like When You're Lost in the Darkness, Infected, and Look for the Light were especially memorable and acted as perfect setup to explain the larger world. Humanity essentially doomed itself, and it made moments like Sarah's death that much more heart-wrenching. Seeing the mayhem as Joel and Tommy try to flee for their lives was also terrifying, but it's made all the more sad when you remember that nobody understands what's going on or what's happening. For those who've played the game first, you can appreciate the cold opens even more than those who are just sticking by the show, all because it adds a further layer of complexity to Joel's decision to choose Ellie over the cure for humanity. In Infected, we're explicitly told that there is no hope for the world or anyone in it. Once again, this can be further appreciated by those who've played the game because we already know the choice Joel is going to make come episode 9. The show is essentially hammering down the idea that this world cannot and does not deserve to be healed. We've done this. We've killed our species off. The only thing people left alive can do is love each other until their inevitable expiration. And speaking of love, we have Bill and Frank. Long Time is my second favorite episode from HBO Max's retelling, and I'm honestly quite baffled by the mixed reception it's gotten by fans online. I think it was an incredibly smart move on the creative part to rework Bill and Frank into a couple. The first game definitely had its theme of love present, whether it be a parental bond or a sibling bond, more akin to something like Henry and Sam. But it's easy to lose sight of that when the majority of the game requires you to focus on killing infected and other enemies with immoral intentions. Plus, it's not like anything valuable was sacrificed in favor of the new approach. Bill was essentially a grumpy, paranoid prick in the first game, and Frank is never seen apart from his corpse at the end of a very specific section of the narrative. Not only was the choice to completely revamp their story justified, it's just downright better on every level. Even seeing how Joel and Tess came to see them was a nice surprise, considering how in the game, their knowing of each other is only mentioned through passing statements. The letter Bill left behind was a beautiful send-off to the story, especially considering the fact that Bill and Joel never really got along and that the letter was intended for Tess, not Joel. It just adds more purpose towards their story being necessary for the development of Joel's character. Having just lost Tess while on the way to Bill and Frank's, seeing the lingering pain as he's unable to hear her name out loud just sparks incredible depth to his character. I love how he snaps at Ellie and mentions how he never wants to speak of Tess again because he's already dealing with the pain enough as it is and then he doesn't need a constant reminder of it. Despite appearing cold and distant, he's willing to carry out Tess's wish anyways because he knows it's the only way to lighten the load of his grief. Literally every aspect of this episode, from witnessing Bill's relationship with Frank evolve over the years, into his themes of loves and desolation, all the way to the episode's perfect final frame, is just perfect storytelling in my opinion. And it makes me incredibly excited to see just how many other characters we'll see developed and altered come season 2. I personally would love to see an episode of this significance with the character of Kat, who goes completely absent in part 2 apart from a couple mentions by Ellie in her journal and in conversation with Dina. In the game, Kat's responsible for Ellie's tattoo, and it's implied that there was a romantic relationship between the two before the events of the second game. If Kat is going to be adapted, I would like to see that relationship play out a little bit, as well as how Ellie got to know characters like Jesse and Dina. I'd really want to see an episode where we just get accustomed to life in Jackson before getting thrown into the events of the second game. Call it a bottle episode, call it a filler, call it a waste of time, call it whatever you want, but at the end of the day, all of this serves to further develop Ellie, and I think it's important to see that the same way we saw it for characters like Joel and Bill. I think Bill and Frank's episode served as perfect exercise for pursuing more TV show related material and original content. But even if we don't get anything like I mentioned, I at least hope we get to see some smaller creative differences along the lines of things like Sam and Henry. Episode 5, Endure and Survive, is my favorite episode in the series, and it's all inclusive, total package of what The Last of Us has to offer moving forward. High tension, explosive action, in-depth emotional character moments, standout side characters that help flesh out the protagonist's motivations, and more lore towards the open world, and how hopeless it feels. Sam and Henry were great additions to the story in The Last of Us Part 1, both as the video game and the TV show. They were made more relevant and more tragic in the show, in my opinion. Not only did Joel and Ellie have mirroring counterparts, but those counterparts are completely different than they are. Henry loves his younger brother more than anything in the world, and will stop at nothing to keep him safe, even if it means having to go up against an army. In this episode, Henry and Sam find themselves desperate for Joel's aid, and they get it, albeit reluctantly at first. The footage we got to see of their bond slowly setting in was really sweet, especially on Sam and Ellie's part. It's the little things in the series that are special to me, like how Ellie plays soccer with Sam while the adults discuss strategy. Seeing Joel listen to Henry's story about causing the Civil War and creating his own worst enemy in Catherine will go on to mirror Ellie and a certain someone's relationship in the coming season. So yet again, the inclusion of an original character like Catherine provides more depth to the constant conflicts that featured across the series. Sam and Henry's deaths were also perfectly done and adapted even better than in the game, in my opinion. The addition of Ellie knowing about Sam's infection and trying to save him with her own blood rather than telling the others was also just superior, in my opinion. They're different, sometimes really different, and they add more of everything that makes this world and its characters so special every time they try something new. While I do agree with some of the criticisms regarding certain moments, like Joel's hospital slaughter not sticking the landing, I think these types of moments make the show worthy of its praise and its high regards. And now I want to touch on the last thing, Joel's PTSD and his hearing injury. This new detail in Joel's character could play a monumental role in the next season if Neil and co. decide to switch things up a little bit. It's established early on into the first season that Joel has a scar on the side of his head, and an episode or two later, Ellie asks him about it, and Joel tells her that he got grazed by a bullet and that it damaged his hearing, something that's put into practice in episode 4 and 5 when Joel is shown to have fallen asleep on his good ear, causing him not to hear Sam and Henry break into their hideout. The big kicker here, however, is that towards the end of the show, Joel reveals to Ellie that the scar was actually from an attempted suicide, likely due to missing his daughter and the hopelessness he felt in the 20 years surviving a zombie apocalypse. This detail was a nice touch to bring Ellie and Joel's bond closer for the final act of the series, but could also work as a very important detail moving forward in the story. If ever the creatives behind Season 2 were to utilize such a detail for something important, something tension-ridden, moving forward, it could easily add more to the emotion of certain moments. Joel's impacted hearing is an easy thing to utilize for more conflict-ridden scenarios, such as combat encounters or stealth encounters. I, for one, am very much looking forward to seeing all of these changes potentially be put in practice for Season 2. Whether it's character progression, lore, or world building, or bottle episodes completely changed from the original narrative, anything to further make this experience that much better than it already was in the game is a win in my book, and I'm excited to see all of it come April.
We'll be back.